Now, quickly, before we get into this episode, a quick word from our sponsor, us. Or in other words, 1000 Visuals, the production company behind 1000 Voices. With 1000 Voices, I was looking for a studio that had that high quality cinematic and homely feel to it, but I just couldn't find anywhere. So we decided to open up our own space. We've got 4 high quality cinema cameras. We've got shotgun mics, not those podcasting mics that cover half your face as well, so people can see you when you're speaking to them. And we've got some basic amenities as well. Water, herbal teas, espressos, you name it. We'd love to invite you to come down to our space to create some content with us. If you are interested, check the link in the description and I'd love to take you on a tour of this space and invite you to come record some stuff with us. Thank you. Now let's get back to the episode. Thank you for coming to the podcast, Paul. How are you today?
I'm good, man. Very much looking forward to this.
Yeah, and very much looking forward to speaking with you today. Looking forward to it quite a bit.
Likewise.
Quite a bit.
Likewise.
So I think a good place for us to start, you being you, and probably not going to come as much as a surprise, would be on the topic of failure.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people probably have heard the stories of some of the more famous failures, some of maybe the Oprahs or the Walt Disneys and that kind of thing. But I'd like to reflect on your own journey with failure, your own relationship with failure, and how that's molded you into the person you are today.
Yes.
What would you say has been, if we look back at your own life, maybe your first significant failure and what that done to you, what that done for you, I should even say?
It's a good question. And I think that failure is always there. It was always there, kind of like hovering, and you kind of don't know how to, back then. So I'm going back to school, really. School, your relationship with failure relates to exams. So you do your exams and so forth. So that was my first, I guess, interaction with failure and becoming aware of it. It wasn't as profound as I got older, but exams. So going to school, doing your GCSEs, you get your grades. Some of my grades were good, some of them weren't so good. So I had to, when I did my GCSEs, I had to do some again so I could do A levels. So that was disappointing. It wasn't it wasn't to the point where it was damaging, but certainly it was annoying. It was more of an annoyance then, that I had to do retakes and actually stay a year back before I could do my A levels and then go to university. So that was kind of my first real, I guess, firm engagement with it. And it was an annoyance, but also I think definitely you feel slightly ashamed in certain subjects where you should have done better, didn't do as well as you should have done, and that definitely was there. That really encouraged me to work harder. I realised that I couldn't coast. I realised that in order to achieve things that you kind of have to put the work in. And out of that, I did learn that if you focus, you do the work, you can achieve things. Because I achieved the grades, went on to do, go to college, university, and so on. Then I kind of went into the workplace after that, and where it really struck me was I worked for publishers. I worked for publishers in Canary Wharf, those areas, and in High Street, Kem. Did that probably for about 10 years. And then I got to a point where, I worked in Canary Wharf for probably about 5 years, moved over to another company in a kind of like the same space, a little bit different, in High Street, Kem. Then the company I worked for, that I had been working for in Canary Wharf, they acquired the company that I was working for in High Street, Ken. So wow. I ended up going back to Canary Wharf by default, and I always thought to myself, I'd never want to really work in Canary Wharf again, because it was always annoying to get to. And I thought, you know what, I've done my 5 years there. I don't want to go back. But it was almost like Groundhog Day. I was going back to the very same building, but instead of going to the 23rd floor, I was going to maybe the 20th floor. And so I went back, I realised that the company that I was working before in High Street Ken, we were very entrepreneurial. We could go out. My background was probably more sales and that type of arena. So that environment was more entrepreneurial. We could have an idea, go and speak to the client, come back to the business and say, look, we want to do this. It's a little bit different than what we've been doing before. Can we do it? Pretty much we were given free rein to have those conversations, and the business would pretty much back us. Going back to Canary Wharf, it was more corporate. It was more, I guess, they had, I guess, things in place so you couldn't free will it. You know, you might be working on something, and it might take you a year from going out having a conversation to actually executing, because there were so many different stakeholders involved in a potential decision for a deal. So I realised that when I went back that maybe this probably wasn't the best fit, and this is leading up to a failure which did impact me. So I decided. So randomly, I got an opportunity which came from nowhere, and it was to join a startup, and it was in the same ecosystem, but on it was more on a tech side than on a publisher side, and it was working with people that I knew well. We all had wonderful relationships, and we still do today, and it was exciting, and it kind of came left field. So I was approached by it, flattered, and decided, well, I'll take it, because I was feeling slightly, in a corporate role, I felt that I didn't have passion for it. I felt slightly restricted in my ability to use initiative. So I thought, this is totally what I need. So I took the role, and I kind of started, I think it was at the back end of the year, so I started this role in a startup in January. And so we had huge ambition. We were all very excited, nervous at the same time. And I won't go into the sort of the ins and outs, but ultimately we had developed a tech play where we wanted to support publishers, smaller publishers, help them monetize their digital real estate, and we felt that we could really fill a void in the market that pretty much had, to our mind, was potentially neglected, and we felt that we had the expertise and we had the tech tools to plumb a solution together, or knit a solution together is probably a better word, and actually and deliver that to publishers that either didn't have the expertise, or maybe they didn't have the resource internally. And it never really got going. We kind of had some initial successes, but it never really yielded the results that we wanted to. My role was to look after partnerships and growth, so pretty much sales, and it was leveraging relationships that I'd got in the market. I had lots of relationships that I'd harnessed over the years, so I was able to kind of go to market. So we go and speak to them and really get them to buy into it, but we couldn't really scale the way that we needed to scale. We didn't have huge investment to underpin the operation, so we kind of, most people, as anybody that's listened to this and watching that works in that startup land, when you get going, the egg timer's on, in terms of, you know, you burn cash.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to be in a place where you don't, even if you've got lots and lots of money, you can really burn cash quite quickly. So your play has to be pretty nailed on. All the members of the team have to be switched on in terms of what their role is, how they're going to execute, and also you need to learn very quickly, and also you need to be flexible in terms of you can't have a standard role. Your role, although I was looking at partnerships and growth, we were all doing multiple things from finance to IT. When I worked in a corporate, I would just literally drop an email to somebody, to somebody in relation to IT, go make a coffee, come back, and it's all done. This was totally different. I was having to, how do I do this?
The startup world, you get
Yeah.
involved in everything, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. We get involved in everything. So long story short, after about 10 months, I was made redundant, and it was pretty devastating because so literally, I'd get people messaging me saying, "Your new job, let's catch up about it." I wasn't there. I wasn't there. Gone. Hasn't lasted. But so that was, so we knew it was coming because on a lot of platforms, particularly in the tech space, particularly on the sales side, you actually can see in real time what the revenue's like. So you could just go into UI dashboard and you could see what the revenue would be like. You'd kind of know what it would be like anyway because you'd be aware of what deals you were doing. And so I had to process that, and that was so. It's interesting. It's an interesting question you pose because I think that if I reflect on it now, I felt more embarrassed. There's probably a bit of relief as well, because I probably felt that knew it wasn't going particularly well, and sometimes when you know it's not going particularly well, you kind of have these conversations with yourself, and some of it you keep in denial, and some of it, when you become more experienced, you can be more honest about, and you actually can deal with it. At the time, probably I wasn't able to be as honest with myself as possible. If I look back on it now, was that role the best role for me and the business? Me doing that role, having the right passion for it? There's question marks there, and you kind of don't, at the time, you kind of push them to one side because we're all in it together. We need to deliver, and you want to deliver your absolute best for the team. The business didn't survive ultimately, but you kind of, we're all friends and comrades, so we all wanted to represent each other and do as well as we possibly could. So that was tough to digest and to process. And as I say, there's a stigma. You don't like saying, well, I got made redundant after 10 months. What, you were talking about that and about this going to be the best thing since sliced bread and this, that and the other. And you say, well, potentially it could be, but it's not going to be with me. And so you have to kind of process that, and then you dust yourself down. But I think what you do over time and experience, you realise that when we think that the world's looking at us because something's happened to us, they're not. Everybody's getting on with their lives.
It's true.
And everybody is focused on, most people want the best for us, individuals. And I learnt to kind of over a period of time, I learnt to have a different narrative and perspective when it comes to failure and what it means. So I got another job quite quickly, quite lucky. Got another job probably 3 months later in the same space. But I had this, I would be at the gym, I would go to dinner, I could be anywhere, and I started to think about, you mentioned people like Oprah.
Yeah.
I started to think about people like Oprah. How does Oprah cope with difficult moments? How does Oprah cope with setbacks? And I thought she copes with it differently to me. Jay-Z, he's had setbacks. He deals with it miles differently to me. So I started to think about this more and more and more. And it kind of concerned me that potentially you've got people all over the world that are very, very capable at whatever their given talent is. But they might have a setback, a difficult moment, because I don't like the word failure because of the connotation. I prefer to use setback.
Yeah.
And maybe they're not living their real life. There's an author called Stephen Pressfield who's done lots of wonderful books, The War of Art, Turning Pro. He talks about this concept called shadow lives. So it's that inability to really go after what we really want to do. And it could be because of a setback. It could be because of fear. It could be because of lack of confidence. There's a whole myriad of things that go into that. But I thought about everybody or people that aren't like Oprah, that aren't like Jay-Z, that aren't like Thomas Edison, that maybe they're doing their life isn't what it should be because they've not been able to process failures. They've not been able to process setbacks. And that, I thought that's crazy, because when we have setbacks, if we're able to process it, like Oprah as an example, she uses failures, or I'll go back to the word setbacks. She uses setbacks as opportunities. She uses setbacks as an opportunity to grow. She's learnt more than she knows more today than she did yesterday or the beginning of the day. And that's the way that we should be processing these difficult moments that do happen, because you, as an example, put together an amazing podcast.
Thank you.
And it's amazing what you're doing and the growth that you've had. And in order to get to this point where you're producing wonderful content and you've got this wonderful initiative and idea, you would have, to get to this point now, there would have been difficult moments, challenges. But instead of, when those challenges hit you, instead of packing up and thinking, you know what, this is hard, this is far harder than I ever anticipated, because your vision and your purpose is strong, you decided, actually, you've developed a behaviour where you learn from all those different situations, those different setbacks, those challenges. And that's the kind of mindset that I want everybody to have, that ability where, like Carol Dweck, who's written a book called Mindset, it's a wonderful book. She talks about the growth mindset. You've got the fixed or the growth mindset. Fixed is you're kind of like that, and I definitely used to be like that, where if you hit a dead end, you're kind of thinking, well, maybe it's not meant to be. If you've got that growth mindset, which you've used to navigate all these different challenges that you'd have had to get to this point, you think, well, now I know that it doesn't work this way, I can look over here and I can tweak things and I can adjust things. And that's where, I want to get to from a personal perspective.
Yeah.
I want to have more of that about me, but also I think that we live in such challenged times, difficult times, but hopeful times as well. I just think it's really important that people have the tools, because we all have them within ourselves, but it's just having that ability. Well, I think initially it's having the awareness that we all are very capable. Setbacks are an opportunity, and once we have that awareness, we now have the ability to actually achieve remarkable things.
Thank you for that context. With your experience working at the startup,
Yeah.
it was 10 months. That sounds super volatile. Like within 10 months, the firm has gone from, okay, great, we've got this super amazing offering or service that we're doing, and then 10 months later, people are being made redundant because maybe cash is being burnt through that. And in your capacity, you were the head of partnerships and growth, essentially probably the most senior in charge of sales.
Well, yeah, it was a lean team, and everybody was sort of pretty senior, so everybody had a senior title.
So what I'm wondering was, with yourself and having that sales remit, and then the firm not doing as well as it did, and then that being what you deemed like your first significant setback, was there And then there's also the element of embarrassment or shame and everything. The same thing you spoke about when you spoke about your exams
Yeah.
and having to repeat. And then there's that same element of shame and embarrassment there. Do you feel that, two questions off the back of that. One, with this particular setback, was there an element of the facts that you felt you were responsible for bringing in the business and therefore maybe taking it very personally that things didn't take off the way the team probably expected it to take off?
Yeah.
Was there that element of it that made it more difficult, that personal element? And secondly, after that particular experience, how has the way in which you interact with setback yourself evolved or changed, particularly from a mental standpoint? Do you still have that same shame or embarrassment that comes with it, or has that evolved over time?
Yeah, I think it has evolved. I'll answer the first part of the question first, and then I'll answer the second part.
Yeah.
So I think we've been made redundant from that role. I guess what I learnt along the way, I didn't learn this at the beginning, I learned this along the way, that it's better not to blame anybody else for anything that happens to us, because it's counterproductive. We focus on the wrong thing. It's almost like blame culture, and that probably is counterproductive. So we're all adults in the room. So when we do something, when we take on a challenge, a different initiative, we do it with our eyes open. They employ us because they like us, because they believe that we're skilled, we're intelligent, we're hardworking, we're trustworthy. So there's gratitude for them giving me the opportunity. So I would never, and these people are friends. If they walked in and now, we'd be friends. We'd kind of like, we'd hug and we'd embrace, and we would, we would get on. We might be a little bit reflective over a drink or something. So I think when you go into the startup world, it is volatile. It is difficult. It can break you. It can. I said that we're friends. People can go into these environments as friends, and very quickly those friendly relationships can fall by the wayside. So I kind of knew what I was getting into. It was probably more, I wish there was the outcome was different, but as I reflect on it now, I listened to a wonderful interview you did with Chloe Davis, and part of what she was talking about was things happen for a reason. Not that we wanted the business not to succeed, but that everybody that was part of that journey would have grown. Because when I look back at that job, I learned so much. That's a key part of it. In 10 months, I probably learned more in 10 months than I did in 5 years, because I was doing so many different things. So you don't look at that. When you fail, you think about embarrassment. You don't think about the growth. There's huge growth when we have an ideal, a purpose, and we go after it. We tend to focus on the negative and not any positive. The brain, I learned, I was on a talk recently, and somebody said that, as a psychologist said that the brain is 4 times more in tune, when something happens, it's 4 times more in tune with the negative than the positive. So we're gonna, without that awareness, we're gonna lean into the negative. And the second part of the question, I think for me, my relationship is different with setbacks, because to Carol Dweck's, what I mentioned before, there are opportunities. Growth mindset is the ability to, something happens, not what we want to happen. The people that we really admire have got that ability to kind of take that information and use it from a positive perspective. Anybody that you admire that's successful, whether they be a podcaster, an author, a salesperson, an athlete, a musician, 100% of those people would have had any number of different challenges, setbacks, failures, whatever you want to call it. But what they've all got in common is they've all got a unique ability to use those situations as opportunities to grow and develop.
Thank you for that. I've got a number of different, loads of different threads of questions now coming to my head. One thing I think would be very, very valuable is that I'm a believer that, and you can maybe correct me if you have different thoughts or beliefs, but I'm a believer that, because you mentioned maybe Oprah, Jay-Z, and some of these other more famous people that we come across, they've gone through the same challenges that me and you and every other person has gone through, or everyone else in their particular field has gone through, or a similar set of challenges, and for whatever reason they've been able to come back, overcome, and achieve a major level of success. And I'm a believer it's literally just down to how they've reacted to setbacks that they've had. Not everybody does or can react to setbacks that they had, and also not everybody even knows where the growth opportunity is in the setback they've had. Like, how do you learn? Where is the learning? Where's the growth? How can someone see the opportunity in a setback? Where is it? How do you begin to understand where it is?
Well, I think today we live in 2024, years ago, didn't have internet, technology, didn't have YouTube, didn't have books one en masse. So, and also you didn't have people out there, thought leaders that were putting out wonderful content that we can all access. Like, as an example, you produce a podcast. Anybody that wants to level up can access your podcast at the click of a button. Go to their podcast, go to their smartphone, simple tap. You got that. You can listen to that. You can listen to that at the gym. You can listen to that at the tube. So to answer your question, I think that you kind of have to, in my opinion, we have to align ourselves to people that are doing good things. We have to become more aware. We have to. So somebody said to me the other day that in life there are always opportunities, but it's kind of like having that awareness to kind of to take action and to be accountable for ourselves when these moments happen. It's not easy, but I think over time we do develop an awareness where we can learn and we can access, just going back to what I was saying before, there's YouTube, there's books. People you don't have to have physical contact with these people. A lot of people that I follow, I've never met. A lot of people that inspire me, I will never ever meet. But they've got books, they've got podcasts, they've got YouTube channels. It could be a work colleague, and it doesn't happen instantly. But I think that if we really want to tune in to opportunity, I think we take a moment and we become aware, and then we just act. And acting could be just listening to something that gives us clarity of mind. Because I think when we get in a practice of doing that, things will change. We'll start listening to different things. Our thoughts will be different to what they were before. So it's not easy, but it is just a different practice, a different habit.
Before we started recording, you made an offhand comment about, so for anybody, if you're watching on YouTube, you might be able to see that Paul's got right now a cup of herbal tea in his hand. And you got the love. It's a love pucker tea. he made an offhand comment about, yeah, I'll take the love one, we need more love in the world.
Yeah.
And then proceeded to prepare your tea. And also, you've got your own podcast. You mentioned 1,000 Voices, but you've got your own one as well, My Perfect Failure. And you're also working a full-time job.
Yeah.
Got a podcast, working a full-time job has clearly got to be a passion of yours, because it's not easy to juggle both of those things. I'm wondering, what is important to you right now? I mean, what is it that what's your vision? What are you striving for? Why do you do what you do, and what keeps you going?
I think what keeps me going is because I know how I felt when I got made redundant. I know how I felt. It wasn't the end of the world. Maybe for 48 hours it felt like the end of the world. But then I tapped into what I learned. And then, like you, I like people, and I think that in life life isn't forever, and we're not here for an infinite amount of time. And I think the idea that we can go through life without really understanding who we really are because of situations that happen, setbacks, and we do a job every day, or we go into a profession that we're really not aligned to, but we just done it. We have that compound effect where we just do something out of habit, but it's not really what we want to do, because we don't have the confidence, because we're not around the right people to kind of give us those little points of direction to say, look, man, you can do this. You've got the ability. Read this, listen to this. It can happen. And so that's why I do the podcast, because I believe that there are lots of people that have slipped through the cracks. I'm one of them, and you can live. It's very easy to live somebody else's life, and I want to give as many people as I can a seed of hope that their own life is accessible to them. It's a decision away. Like, you and I, you've agreed, thankfully, to come on my podcast, and you could say one thing that somebody could pick up, and that is just a seed, and that will change that person's life. It will lead to them to maybe listening to your podcast. They might listen to the one with Chloe Davis that I mentioned, or they might just do something else. They might look that you and your partner are creating here, and they might think, well, I've got a similar idea to that, or I've got an idea. It might be a totally different subject, and yeah, I just want to be able to drop little seeds into people's lives that will help them realise that actually I can do something that maybe I thought I never could do, because it's for other people, not me.
How many people have you interviewed so far for your podcast?
I think I've published. Good question. I published.
It's quite a lot.
Yeah, I've probably interviewed just shy of 300.
Wow. Okay. Wow.
Yeah, just shy of 300. I haven't published that many, but I've interviewed, and to some that I haven't published yet.
Do you see any commonalities between the people that you've spoken to and interviewed for your podcast in terms of like how they've been able to overcome the setbacks that they faced?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I guess I guess there's a couple of things spring to mind. One is that they all don't realise how resilient they are. Sometimes we have to hit rock bottom. Maybe not rock bottom, but we have to experience difficult moments to realise how capable we really are. And one thing that really shines out to me from all the people that I've had conversations with is that those difficult moments had led to them all to, when they've acknowledged those difficult moments, it's given them almost the strength to go after it, to go after what they really want to in life. And they're all ready to learn, and they're all, some of them, I not always, but a lot of the time I ask this question about around, now that your life has changed, now you're doing something that was a million miles away from what you were doing before, was it all worth it? A lot of them say yes. Some of them say, well, you know what, I'm glad what I'm doing now, but I wish I didn't have to go through that. But I guess the thing that gives me hope and gives me encouragement is that regardless of where we are, if anybody's listening to this or watching this now, regardless of where you are now, that if it's a difficult moment, it's just a difficult moment. It's an opportunity to learn, and you can and you will be able to find a better way, a better opportunity, a life where you're living a life that is, it might be quite different to what you're doing now, but it will be the life that you want. And I'm not sure if I've quite answered that question, but I think that resilience is there, and the ability to get up and to go again.
From a personal perspective, I've had difficult moments. I've had super difficult moments, and I feel that, like, I've had moments that have been, been tough or whatnot, but through my own strength or through my own resilience and whatnot, I've been able to overcome and learn and grow from it. I've had moments more recently, or periods of time, maybe like a year or two ago, where it was crazy tough. And it's tough, and then you still go to work, you chat to people, you're smiling and everything. Nobody knows what's up, but you got to put on your happy face and all that. But I've had moments where it's crazy, where I'm thinking all sorts of stuff, and whilst it's not about me right now, maybe we can delve into it when I come to your podcast. But if it wasn't for my wife, I'm struggling. I'm really struggling, but that's because I've had some outside help. In terms of, like, because I think with a lot of people, they probably understand the concept of failing or setbacks, and then learning from the setbacks and going through it. And from the outside in is easy to be like, yeah, for sure. We know, we can look at Michael Jordan and Jay-Z and whatnot. Yeah, we know. Great. When it happens to us, we'll just do the same thing. When you're in it, it's different. It's tough. From a mindset perspective, like, how can someone navigate it when they're in the midst of a really tough period, a really tough setback or whatnot? From a mindset perspective, what I don't know, is there particular resources or particular practices that you'd recommend, or you've heard of people talk about that people can utilize to come out or from these?
So you've actually said probably what my answer would be, or certainly a certainly significant part of my answer is to if anybody, you, I, listening, watching, experiencing difficult moments, like really difficult moments, we don't need to be in these moments alone. We should ask, we should reach out to somebody, whether it be a loved one, a partner, a family member, a colleague at work, or somebody that we just know that you have those conversations with. There might be just one person. Don't suffer in silence. Reach out to people, because there are so many people that do want to help, that do want to support. Maybe all we need for them is to listen. So we definitely should reach out. We should also, what I think is an important resource is to, particularly when we're trying to achieve things, I definitely feel that people talk about people being man-made and all this and the other when they achieve, or women-made when they go and achieve excellence. They've always got somebody in their corner that supports them. Nobody ever does anything remarkable alone. So I definitely feel that we have to be, to have that to develop that gene where we ask for help. Don't suffer in silence. There are people. I know with use the word failure, that some people don't want to, like me as an example. I'm not a great one for reaching out and asking for help, or I'm not. But there are one or two people that I can. I've got like an old work colleague that if I'm struggling, I ring him up. He works, but we find time. Similar to me, he will ring me up. I've got a couple of friends that will ring me up when they're going. And the interesting thing is, sometimes when they ring me up, they actually got the answers. All I'm doing is listening. I'm just a soundboard.
Mm.
So I think that is a tool that most of us have at our own disposal, and I think that we shouldn't suffer in silence.
You mentioned something, you just brought a memory to my head. You say just a soundboard. Like I remember, not even that long ago, probably a few months ago, I was just working a lot.
Yeah.
On the podcast and on at work and everything, and I was just really tired. Really tired. And I remember I was coming home, and I don't know what happened. It was late because I don't know what happened. I can't remember, but it was late for some reason, and I think I missed my train. And it was, when it was like 0 degrees, I was like, I was so cold waiting on the platform. I called my wife, and I was like, I'm tired. It's not that I wanted any advice. I just wanted to get it off my chest. And then after I got off my chest, I felt better. I just wanted to talk and rant a bit. And I like what you said about, so you don't necessarily have to answer. Just have a soundboard there, someone you can just get off your chest to, so you don't feel like you're going through things alone. You've mentioned a number of different books throughout this podcast so far. Do you have any particular resources that you'd recommend for in this area of setback and failure?
Carol Dweck's book, My Mindset. I'd recommend that. I'd recommend Ryan Halliday's book. The Object is the Way. That's a good book to look at. There's also, I would recommend anything by Seth Godin. Linchpin is a wonderful book. There are another book that I like, and I think it's very, very impactful, and somebody that goes through huge challenges is Phil Knight's Shoe Dog.
Yeah.
That's an amazing book, because you've got somebody that's created Nike that encountered any number of challenges, and I don't want people to go through that depth of challenges, but it shows you that you can go beyond that. And he had, you've got your wonderful partner. He had his wonderful partner that was there for him through thick and thin. So there are lots of others that equally will probably be impactful.
Yeah. And I see you very humbly haven't mentioned your own podcast as well.
Well, I'm lucky that you've agreed to come on it. Yeah, but My Perfect Failure is kind of like around what we've been discussing, and it's I get huge satisfaction out of meeting wonderful people. From a selfish perspective, it's brought me into contact with so many amazing people, and I get to remind myself every time I have a conversation that people have huge potential, and that it's almost, like we get that compound effect where you realise that regardless of what industry our passion is, if we encounter difficult moments, we can achieve. And just to sort of labour on that, I think if we're not having difficult moments, it's almost counterintuitive, but if we're not experiencing challenges, it's almost like we're coasting, that we're not actually going to hit the ceiling of our capability. If you don't have any, so like if you and I as podcasters don't experience any difficult moments to get to where we want to go to, we're probably never going to get there, because there has to be some resistance. There has to be moments where we don't get things right in order for us to develop and grow.
For sure. A million percent. A
Yeah.
million percent. You mentioned your podcast, you asked your guests whether they would go through their
Yeah.
journey ever. And most people
Mm.
say, yeah. Some people say, nah, I wish I didn't have
Yeah.
to go through it. I'll put that back to you. Would you, if you had to, would you go through your entire journey all over again? And if you, and also actually add on to that, what would you do, if anything, differently to what you did?
So, so I was going to say I'm glad I went through it. I wouldn't say that. That's extreme. So I would say that I think it was meant to be. I was meant to have that difficult moment. I think it mattered. And I think it was an opportunity for me to learn and grow. I didn't realise that at the time, but I realise it now because I wouldn't have had all these amazing conversations. And also since then, it's not all been, it's all smelling of roses. I still do encounter challenges, but to your point, you asked me earlier about how I engage with those difficult moments. I think I just have a better relationship and a better awareness around how I approach them and how I mentally I'm sort of geared up to deal with them. I still have difficult moments. I still think, oh, why did that happen? I didn't need that to happen today. This, that, and the other. But I've just got better capacity to deal with that. There was a second part. I forgot the second part of the question.
If you was to go back,
Yeah.
what would you do differently, if anything?
Would I do anything differently? You know what I think I would like to have had is more faith in me. I think more faith in my ability to, in my capacity to overcome situations. Just have more faith in me generally. I think before then, my resistance and my strength has grown. It probably was more fragile then. I wish it was a little bit robust back in the day. But maybe that's the journey. Maybe if I didn't go through that moment, I wouldn't be sat here now talking to you. And I'm glad that I'm sat here talking to you. So what happened then was meant to happen. And there will be more failures along the way, but those failures, I believe, will be part of my journey. They're part of my growth. They're part of the legacy I want to leave. So if I go through life without any more failures, then that's a problem.
That's amazing. That's great. Paul, it's been amazing.
Thank you, Tevin, man. It's been great.
Yeah. Have you got any final words for us?
Well, yeah. My final words are: I love 1,000 Voices. It's a huge honour to be part of this podcast and contribute, and to be one of 1,000 amazing conversations you're going to have. And I guess finally, I think that everybody listening, watching your podcast should enjoy. But equally, I think they've all got amazing opportunities ahead of them, despite what challenges they will encounter. And we shouldn't let difficult moments be the end. They're not the end. They should be the beginning of the next chapter. They're never the end.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Your podcast is everywhere, right?
Yeah,
right.
So you can find My Perfect Failure on all the normal directories.
Perfect. Check out My Perfect Failure. I love the concept, by the way. So
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll put it in the description when this episode comes out, whenever it does come out. But that's that for now. Thank you for coming to the podcast, Paul. Very much appreciated. We had Paul Padmore, the host and founder of My Perfect Failure. And for now, people, we're out. If you would like to understand how you can use your voice to drive change, how you can craft compelling stories to move audiences, and for additional wisdom from the guests that we have on the podcast, sign up to our newsletter. Every single week, we send actionable pieces of advice to change makers like you. So if you haven't already, the sign up link for the newsletter will be in the description of this episode.